You have heard of the Sicilian Mafia. You have seen the Godfather. You know Al Capone. You know the five families of New York. But there is another organization, older, quieter, far more dangerous. An empire hidden inside the poorest region of Italy that today controls 80% of Europe's cocaine supply, earns over 40 billion euros a year, and operates in more than 30 countries. And almost no one knows their name. This is the story of the Ndrangheta. Southern Italy, 1860. The country has just unified, but unification brought nothing to Calabria, the rough mountainous toe of Italy's boot. No roads, no schools, no jobs. The government taxed the poor and ignored them. In that abandoned land, with no state and no justice, the people built their own system. A shadow government, a parallel world with its own laws, its own courts, its own punishments. They called themselves gli onorati, the honored men. The world would call them the Ndrangheta. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia, which was exposed in congressional hearings, written about in newspapers, and turned into Hollywood legend, the Ndrangheta stayed invisible. No films, no headlines, no famous faces, just Mountie, NS, and silence, and blood. To understand the Ndrangheta, you must understand one thing. Blood is everything. Every other mafia in history recruits soldiers. They hire men, they build armies. The Ndrangheta recruits families. Their basic unit is called the Ndrangheta, a single crime family, connected by blood and marriage. Each Ndrangheta controls a territory. Each Ndrangheta is completely independent. They do not answer to a central boss. They answer only to their own blood. This is what made them impossible to destroy. You cannot arrest a family. You cannot turn a man against his own brother, his own father, his own son. Within every Ndrangheta, there are two societies. The lower society, the young soldiers, the men who carry guns, run drugs, and collect debts, and the upper society, the elders, the bosses, the men who sit in churches on Sunday morning and drink coffee in the village square, men whose names are never spoken in public. Their code has one law above all others, Omertà, silence. Not silence from strangers, silence from everyone, even under arrest, even under torture, even when your friends are shot dead beside you. If you talk, your family pays. If you betray, you die. In 150 years, that code has almost never been broken. In the 1970s, the Ndrangheta needed money, and they had a solution. Kidnapping. Not street crime. Not random robbery. Calculated surgical kidnapping of Italy's wealthiest families. Over 200 kidnappings over 2 decades. Their most infamous victim, 1973, John Paul Getty III, 16 years old, grandson of the richest man in the world, snatched from the streets of Rome, held for 5 months in the mountains of Calabria. His grandfather refused to pay, so the Ndrangheta sent a message. They cut off the boy's ear and mailed it to a newspaper, along with a note. "This is Paul's ear. If we don't receive the money, the next thing we send will be a finger. Then another piece. He will arrive home in small packages." The ransom was paid. Paul Getty III was released alive, but destroyed. He spent the rest of his life in pain, never recovering from what those mountains took from him. The world shuddered. And the Ndrangheta returned to Calabria richer, bolder, and still almost completely unknown. In the 1980s, everything changed. The Ndrangheta made one decision that turned them from a regional crime family into a global superpower. They entered the cocaine trade. While other Italian mafias were being dismantled by police crackdowns and internal wars, the Ndrangheta flew to Colombia. They met the cartels, they made deals, and they built a cocaine pipeline across the Atlantic that no one had seen before. Ships from South America, containers through Spain, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Distribution networks across Germany, France, Australia, and Canada. By 2008, Italy's own anti-mafia commission confirmed what seemed impossible. The Ndrangheta controlled 80% of all cocaine entering Europe. Not the Sicilians, not the Colombians. The men from Calabria, their annual revenue 35 to 40 billion euros. More than MC Donald's, more than Deutsche Bank, more than the entire economy of some European nations. And still almost no one knew their name. Here is what separates the Ndrangheta from every other criminal organization in history. They did not hide in shadows. They hid in the light. The billions they made from cocaine were not buried in cash. They were invested, laundered through construction companies, supermarkets, restaurants, and real estate across Europe and beyond. While governments were looking for men in dark alleys, the Ndrangheta was building their office buildings, serving them coffee, packing their groceries. In some parts of Calabria, it became impossible to tell where the Ndrangheta ended and normal business began. They were the economy. One Italian prosecutor described it perfectly. The Sicilian Mafia wants you to know it exists, so you fear it. The Ndrangheta wants you to forget it exists, so you never fight it. August 15, 2007, Duisburg, Germany. Outside an Italian restaurant called De Bruno, 6 men are shot dead in their cars on a summer night. Not in Calabria. Not in Naples. In Germany, the victims and the killers all Ndrangheta. 2 rival clans from the same tiny Calabrian village of San Luca. A blood feud that had started decades earlier had followed families across continents and exploded in a German city. Germany was in shock. Europe was in shock. Law enforcement agencies from Berlin to Brussels asked the same question. How long had these people been here? How deep did this go? The answer was terrifying. Decades. Everywhere. Deeper than anyone had imagined. The Ndrangheta had been living among them the entire time in the restaurants, the construction firms, the quiet neighborhoods, and no one had noticed. The Sicilian Mafia was destroyed by informants. The Cartel was torn apart by American DEA operations. The 5 families of New York were gutted by RICO laws. But the Ndrangheta survived everything. Why? Because of blood. Every other mafia eventually recruits outsiders. Outsiders can be turned. They can be bribed. They can be scared into testimony. The Ndrangheta recruits only family. And you cannot turn a man against his own blood. Because of structure. The Ndrangheta has no single boss. No godfather. No chairman. Each Ndrangheta is independent. Arrest one family, 20 others keep operating. You cannot cut the head off something that has no single head. And because of patience, the Ndrangheta thinks in generations. Not months. Not years. Generations. There is an old Calabrian saying the water wears the stone, not with force, not with explosions, with time, with stillness, with silence. That is how they built their empire, and that is how they kept it. July 13, 2010. Italian law enforcement, working with agency SIS in Germany, Canada, and Australia, launched Operation Crimine, the largest coordinated strike against the Ndrangheta in history. 305 arrests. Across 4 continents, simultaneously. For the first time, prosecutors proved what they had long suspected. The Ndrangheta was not a loose collection of independent families. It was a unified empire, structured, hierarchical, coordinated. Italy's Supreme Court formally designated them a mafia-type criminal association under national law. It had taken 150 years to say it officially. Operations continue to this day. In 2023, fugitives were arrested in Ibiza with false passports, cash, and a watch worth more than 100,000 euros. In 2024, Spanish police confirmed the Ndrangheta is expanding into Catalonia and the Spanish coast. They are still here. They are still growing. They are still silent. In the mountains of Calabria, there is a saying passed down through generations of Ndrangheta families. Whoever has a good friend has a good treasure. But the friends of the Ndrangheta are not chosen. They are born. The world learned the name Corleone from a movie. The world learned Capone from the newspapers. The Ndrangheta needed none of that. They built an empire worth more than 40 billion euros a year quietly, patiently, invisibly in the restaurants, the construction sites, and the silence of a region the world forgot. They are the most powerful criminal organization on earth, and most people have never heard their name. Asterisk, the Ndrangheta operates in over 30 countries. Asterisk, their estimated annual revenue exceeds 40 billion euros. They control 80% of Europe's cocaine market. Most of their members have never been arrested.